Alright, everybody, we should be getting started here live for our weekly show on game design. So, as always, I am Josh Placer, and joining me is indie game developer Shark. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Things are complicated, as usual.
Yep, me too. I got an email from my publisher wanting to talk, and we set up a time and they didn't show, so now I'm once again in my holding pattern, waiting to see what's going to happen with book number 3. And, hey, hello. And this week coming up, I'm going to do probably another live game design presentation. We're going to be doing one on roguelike design, which will hopefully be the topic of book number 3.
So you decided to go with roguelike instead of horror?
I figure, there seems to be so many people talking more about roguelikes now that it seems like this may be a good time to capitalize on it.
Are these people you?
And everyone on the Discord.
Well, that's mainly because you're the one starting the conversations.
Mm-hmm. And that article on Gama Sutra that annoyed me.
Yep.
But, as always, this is going to be for the week of January 26, 2020, and next week is actually going to be my birthday. So, no idea what I'm going to do for that one yet.
24-hour birthday stream?
Yeah, sure. 24-hour roguelike birthday stream.
There we go.
But we have a lot to talk about, as well as some topics on game design to get to. So, I guess, did anything in the news jump out at you this week?
Nothing specifically game dev related.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we did have some news today, specifically about Kobe Bryant dying, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a surprise there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Anything going on with Gama Sutra? This is something that I reported on earlier. That Duelist is officially aging live. I think that counts for every stream right there. But some very interesting news. Duelist, the very popular free-to-play deck builder, kind of like a strategy or tactics game meets CCG, is officially closing its servers and basically going under as of next month. According to a Gama Sutra piece, it was officially released in 2016, and the shutdown is going to be happening on February 27th. And this is one of those things that I think is a very big shock, I think, to a lot of people, at least from the outside, because I thought for the longest time that game was doing really well.
Yeah, I thought so too. I played it a while back, and I don't remember how long ago, probably a year and a half, something like that. I don't know, it probably wasn't even that long ago, but I played it, and I really enjoyed it. But then I wasn't able to keep on playing because I had to work and do everything else and do all this research and,
Yeah.
Not enough time in the day.
Of course. Yeah, and we had one of the developers on for a live cast. This was 2-3 years ago, too. And, yeah, this has always been that tough thing about the free-to-play market. And I got a video, Thorn gave me an idea to do an update on pay-to-win design, but I want to talk more about with that. But there's always been that issue when it comes to, I think, the long-term viability of free-to-play games. I know this is something that you're definitely thinking about with Project Triad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am by no means an expert on it. I am just getting my feet wet kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And it is, I think, a lot of people, don't really understand not only the work that goes into making a live service game, but I think the cost that goes into it as well. Because as you're well aware, I'm sure as a lot of the developers watching this know, anytime you work on post-release or continual content for a game, that's money. That is costing you money. It doesn't matter if you're doing it for free or... I'm sorry, it doesn't matter if it's something as small as, new hats on a character, something as big as a new quest. That is money that you're taking away from your game. And if you can't, recoup that in some way, it doesn't matter if you are the nicest developer in the world and you release everything for free, you're going under. And I hate to be so cavalier about it, but as we've said before, there's a very big difference between treating a game as a hobby and treating it as a business.
Yeah, I mean, through my design of Project Ride, I've kept those things in mind. It's like, you know, I've kept several things in mind. Number one is with the long term, how much is it going to cost to do these updates, kind of thing, and how much are they? How much can they profit? And I meant that really, like I have like a, not necessarily a set number, but a set estimate for how much each set is going to cost, because most of what it is going to be art, and then some design and whatnot, and a little bit of programming here and there, but very, very light on programming, fairly light on design, and very, very heavy on art. So, when you know roughly what the art cost is going to be, roughly the cost, going forward. And then you look at how much profitability you would need for that. And, it's, it's hopefully in a good ratio that can keep us plenty well afloat, because, I mean, there's more costs than just doing the update. I mean, you've got to keep the servers on. You got to have some kind of profitability. Hopefully, you got to keep on. If you didn't pay for the the making of the game in the first set, you've got to keep on paying for that in the second set and third set, and however many sets it takes to do that. Of course, there is a point where you've got to draw the line and cut it off. I hope that point never arrives for us, basically.
Yeah.
But, having an eternal live service is basically impossible. I mean, maybe we'll be the first people to achieve it, or the second, because, maybe WoW will stay up. But, with the way Blizzard is going right now, that's looking farther and farther down the list.
And I know people will, of course, bring up Fortnite in that regard, but again, Fortnite in its form is only like 2-3 years old. And it is a lot harder when we start talking about games that are 5 or even 10 years, or again, World War I think is now, 16 years old? Something along those lines. And Warframe, I guess, is now about 8 years old. Up 7, 8, around there. And like I was saying on Twitter, this is a great example of a game that came out, it did really well, and it still is going under. I think, again, this is the thing a lot of people have to understand, that I've played many live servers and multiplayer-based games that weren't that good and they died, just as I've played really great games that they've also died. Yep, and Dwarf Fortress is always that exception to the never-ending development rule there. But
yeah, but that's really a single case scenario that really doesn't fit. It's not really a live service technically. It's technically just a regular game that is just continuously, have a good guy that continuously wants to update it because he wants to achieve his dream game. And he's going to chase it until the game kills him, apparently, or until he dies. One of the two. Well, I mean, we could be the first. I mean, I wouldn't really count Dwarf Fortress as a live service. If Blizzard and Warframe drop out at some point, we could be the first. I mean, there's nothing that says we can't be the first. The only thing that says we can't be the first is if we die, kind of thing. I mean, 100 years from now, I still don't think we could see who's going first,
Yeah. But
because 100 years from now isn't forever.
So I'm looking at a Duelist right now on Steam. And I know, like, that game was a Kickstarter title too. I think that's how it was originally pitched. And then they got, I think, bought by Bandai Namco. I don't know when that happened, but it again, like, it's very hard to, I think, keep not only keep these games going, but it does run into that case of what happens when people stop paying for this game. And that is, I think, a greater discussion around free to play design, especially when you're dealing with purchasable content. Not exactly microtransactions, like Boost, but saying, I have, let's say, 500 cards in my game. That is it. So, for most people, once they've acquired those 500 cards, they're not going to want to spend anything else unless you introduce more cards, which again is more work for you to do. And there's no guarantee that if you decide to release, let's say, another 120 card expansion, that people are going to be willing to pay and go with that.
Mm-hmm. And see, the thing is that's where a real big limitation comes in, because we, to keep Project Triad alive, we'll have to keep coming out with new sets.
Mm-hmm.
To keep coming out with new sets, we have to come up with a plot and everything that makes sense and fits and everything. And there is a certain point where you hit critical mass, and at that point, you either have to tank the story because there's literally nothing else that will work, or you have to close it down.
Yeah.
And kind of thing.
Not to mention, of course, you have to keep coming with new mechanics and rules on top of that. Because again, you can't just re-release the same card type or the same strategy and ask people to pay $10 more for it.
With just a different image on it.
Yeah, of course. Unless you do just a cosmetics pack, but as we all know, people like when it's gameplay affecting.
Mm-hmm.
Like Hearthstone, for instance, like all their expansions, like there's a plot, and I'm using air quotes as much as quotey as I can get there with their expansion stuff. But that was never a game to have like a very deep story to it. And even then, it's not like they can be releasing a new expansion every 2 to 3 months, although I'm sure the Activision part of them would love to do that.
Actually, aren't they releasing sets every 3 months?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure both Hearthstone and Magic are releasing a set every 3 months.
Could be. But it is something that, no matter how well I think you plan out, there's no real way, I think, to keep it going. And I always go back to the DC Universe Online example of this. That I remember that developer, heavily touting, we're going to release expansion level content every month, for the foreseeable future for that game. And they got 1 month in and they couldn't keep up at that point.
Yeah. Like, every 1 month is, like, insane. I mean, they should have, like, if they're going for, like, a expansion level, that needs to be every 3 months or 6 months or something like that.
Yeah. And like we've always said, you can never really accurately, get it down to the wire about how long something is going to take to be developed, especially when we start talking about game design. I still remember I talked to the developer of a Bit Shifter, and he basically summed it up very eloquently and said that making a video game is a combination of entertainment and programming. And those two things don't normally go together all that well.
Mm-hmm.
You missed the first 8 hours review of the cast.
I thought it was 8.5.
Oh, yeah, you're right. We started a little bit early. Yep. And to Algoro's point there about you need a sizable team. Again, we are hearing stories of Fortnite, them working, overtime, and they're releasing, new content every week or every other week. And again, that is an insane amount of work.
Yeah, and that's one thing I designed into Project Triad is keeping the work as minimum as possible while giving quality content. I mean, because for Project Triad being a card game, it's the main thing you want is a new set of cards. New set of cards means new character art, new backgrounds,
Yeah.
which is a lot of work.
Again, art is not cheap, as we've all known.
Mm-hmm. And then you need a little bit of design, around, what their powers are, what their stats are going to be, how much are they going to cost, etc. You need a little bit of writing so that the theme and everything, the story all fits together. And then you need a little bit of programming, implementing these mechanics, but mainly like 98, 95, somewhere in there, a large percentage of it is going to be on the art.
Yeah.
And the thing is I want to keep it minimum on that amount of work, as well as I don't want this to be my last game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you won't be betting everything on it.
Yeah. I want to be making other games while this is still going on. So, with it being so hard to the art side, that means that I can hire an artist, or which I've already talked to our current artist, and the plan is that if Project Triad is successful, the new artist will stay on and keep on working, and I'll get some more artists to come in and help him, since I don't want him to crunch. And seeing how it's taking him, so far about he's been working longer than that. I think it's been like 4 months or so that he's been working on it, and he's not even a third of the way done with 150 cards, and we need to pump out 100 cards per set, probably every 3 months. It's like, gonna need to hire some more artists on top of him.
Yeah,
and he just takes over the lead.
I think that is, the perfect segue into our first topic then, talking about adding value to a game, because this is ultimately what's going to keep somebody playing your game. You can only crunch, and it is something that I think is very game and design dependent. So, I guess as kind of like the formal introduction for this topic regarding giving your game value, what we're talking about is doing everything that you can to entice somebody into playing your game and keeping them playing your game. And while Shark has been talking about art for the last few minutes, and art and aesthetics is definitely a very strong example. There we go. We can also discuss things from a gameplay point of view, whether it's by adding in new content, again, new cards in a CCG, to even adding in new mechanics and systems to a title. But ultimately, you're trying to give your game, it's hard to really explain, because again, like any game has inherently some value to it. Maybe even if we talk about the really crappy acid flip ones, have something people can latch onto. But I guess, how would you describe? I know before the stream you asked me, you said that I would have to be the one to kind of lead this, but I guess, how would you describe what does value do to a game, or what does it give to somebody?
Well, going back to our previous cast of where we were doing the time versus the value versus the cost of the game and everything, I would say that the value overcomes the cost that you paid for it. So if you don't have enough value, it doesn't overcome enough the cost, and you feel the game is a ripoff. So if the game is enough value, and then you're happy with that price, then you're happy with the game overall. So the more value you have, the more likely you are to overcome that price.
But I would also add that the opposite could also happen, that you add in content to your game that people don't feel adds value to it, doesn't justify its costs, and then you end up essentially basically in almost like a double negative, One, you've
Yeah.
pissed off your fan base and they don't want to buy this content. And two, you've now sunk more money into something that you're never going to get back because they don't want it.
Yeah, and I think avoiding that is a very key point, and I think a good part of that would be testing.
Yeah.
You want to test this content before you just ship it out on everybody else, or issue it as a DLC, because like even if it doesn't matter if it's charged. Well, it does matter, but like you should be testing it whether it's free or not free.
Yeah. And I want to add something very important here as well. That at the end of the day, if people don't like something, like if your testers all say, no, this is horrible, we don't want it in your game, even if it's developed, it would be better to shelve it than to put out bad content for your game.
Or adjust it to where they do like it.
But if you can't adjust it, if it's just,
Mm-hmm.
As we get back to the old adage, throwing your, killing your baby or killing your darlings, that if this is unsalvageable, don't put it out there for people. Because it will end up doing more harm than good. And the example that I want to talk about very quickly is from, if you
Stadia?
not Stadia, different one. But if you remember, there was the expansion for Warhammer Vermintide 2 that we played on stream. This is, I think, 6 months ago. And let me see if I can get the exact... Here it is. I think it was the Winds of Magic expansion to that game. And right now, it is sitting at mostly negative with just under 1,200 reviews. A lot of people did not like that expansion. They felt it added in... The content that they added in didn't help the game. The new game mode was just horribly imbalanced. Basically, it only rewarded you for the first time you would play it, thereby inherently making it impossible for new players to get into it, down the line if they can't find anyone else to join and help them through it. And not only that, but it was one of their more pricier expansions. It was set at a $20 expansion. So they basically got the worst of every world with that expansion. Now, and like we say, of course, if it is expansion, if it is DLC, you're not, nobody's putting a gun to your head saying you must buy it. But it's still a red mark on an otherwise good game.
Yep. I think DLC in general is a really tricky thing, and to date, I have not personally, I'm sure other people have, but I personally have not found any DLC that gave me the value for the money. Like I dearly love the first Assassin's Creeds, but all the DLCs in there were, it'll give you one map and it'll cost you, I don't remember how much, we'll say $15. It's like, yeah, I'll beat that and go through that in about 20 minutes, and I'm not paying $15 for 20 minutes of content. And
unless you're doing something like adding in new game systems, or basically, in a way, you're creating another game, you're never really going to get that amount of content. Again, with XCOM 2 War of the Chosen, like they went out and said that they added enough stuff that could theoretically fit a third game in terms of all the system changes and stuff they added in. But that is more of an exception, I think, to this rule. And the other thing that I want to talk about in terms of adding value is in the thumbnail I listed Hades as another example. And Hades has come a long way since its early access. I think it's coming out really soon. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago with regards to how do you keep things cost effective. And that game, for instance, has a lot of dialogue. It has, very stylized art as well. So one of the things that they did, I think that was very clever, is that there is no animation to when characters talk. Because again, animating something that stylized would cost a whole lot of money that I'm sure they didn't really want to throw into it. And not only that, but they have all the dialogue as well. So what they essentially do, of course, is just use those still images. And by doing that, it basically saves on that budget. Then now they only have to really worry about is writing and getting the voice actors back in, instead of having to fully animate characters for new cutscenes.
Well, I mean, like they could do it. It would just all they would have to do is create some math flash because those are 2D, aren't they?
I think so.
So they would just have to create some 2D mouth flaps for each one of them, probably like 20 or 30 frames, create programming to overlay it and animate that on top of each of their still images kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The real issue would be is the syncing the lips to the voices. and there are programs out there that will get it in the ballpark pretty easily, but I think those are fairly expensive, and then you would still have to go back and manually go through and get it perfect. And if you're doing this in multiple languages, ooh.
Oh, yes. And that's the other thing, of course. And especially when it comes to adding value to your games, that we're seeing more and more developers take note of, is releasing your game in multiple languages, translations. And this is something that is very game dependent. Again, a game like Super Mario Bros., you don't need to worry too much in terms of the amount of work. But let's take something like Disco Elysium, for instance, where 100% of that game is text. So every language you have to translate that game into is basically like multiplying your workout exponentially or successively there.
Yeah, but if you translate the text and you leave the original audio, it's not. I don't know how much of a big deal that is. I mean, because like it is hard to hire voice actors to in every language kind of thing. I don't think most people would mind that, but I don't actually know. I mean, I know like a lot of people who play Japanese imports kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They like the Japanese language, and if you dare swap it to English, they will cry out kind of thing.
We don't have anyone like that watching this, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And even at that, like I think most of those things only have Japanese and English and nothing else.
Yeah.
So like I don't think people are going to really complain that much, if any, to leave the original voice acting unless English is not that original voice acting, because English has become a main language of the world kind of thing. Like there's so many people in so many different countries that speak English kind of thing. I think more people. I almost think more people speak proper English in other countries than they do in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when it comes to like this kind of like adding more value to your game, especially as we get further, as I said in a post I just wrote, that people expect more from their games these days. And I brought this up in that piece. I don't know how many people read it yet. But one thing that I can always tell from a new or first time developer is how very little value there is in terms of how their game systems and loop work. Like, we've played these games, and I'm sure you and the rest of the chat saw when we play these titles on the Indie Game Spotlight, where you load the game up, it's just a static image, press start, game begins, game ends, goes back to the main menu, that's it. Like, there's nothing really connecting everything together. And it's one of those cases where back in the old days, that would have been fine. The arcade industry worked that very much the same way. But today, it just makes these games feel very bare bones.
Yeah. And I would agree with you, because I mean that's a mistake we did with our last game.
And again,
And I would definitely want to correct that in the remake. And you do need to have a more polished start
hmm
menu and everything. I mean, like the not the game before our last, but one we were working on several years back. We had a super polished uh, title screen that had all these different
hmm
animations and uh, and even a little outro that when you after you collect it was Project Aliens basically, and basically it had like this little monitor that slid down and you get inside the monitor you would have your new game, load game,
hmm
all this other stuff. And then when you like click load or whatever, it would drop down a second monitor over here that had all your save files in it. And then
hmm
there was a couple other things that the other monitor was used like for settings and stuff like that. And then whenever you done whatever you did, one of them would shoot down. I think the second monitor would shoot down off the screen. The top monitor would shoot up off the screen. And then these big doors would close and animate, and then you'd see a little like rotating lock, like turn around and everything, and then it would
hmm
turn. Then after it locked, it would unlock, open up, reveal the game behind it, kind of thing. And we had, the game itself had no polish, but the start and opening was just really polished. And then with our fully released game, we polished the game and not the.
hmm
Uh,
like you remember that game we played last night, the last one for the spotlight. It was like that gladiator game. Like again, like which was all like still images, and again, like these are things people notice these days, and it's hard not to notice because so many games have come out that have hit those high marks of quality, and makes the ones that don't, stick out like a sore thumb.
mm-hmm.
Now, I think one last point, because I think this will be somewhat of a short topic, because it will also lead into our second one later on. That, as we were saying, there's depending upon what you're trying to do in the game in question, it can have varying costs to it. But ultimately, as you said earlier, the goal is how do I maximize value with keeping the cost as low as I can. And the problem, of course, that there's no easy answer to this because every game is different. We can't just say have fully voiced characters and that will solve all your problems. It most likely won't.
Yeah. And this is something indies have to struggle with, period.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like, I don't know, like some indies will release a game and then they'll forget about that kind of thing after release, where they'll build it on a tight budget and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and then they see the money rolling in. It may not be a lot, but it's money that's rolling in, kind of thing. They're making a profit, and they're like, oh, let's we have money now. Let's throw budget out the window and go in this full floor.
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta stay in that mindset where you want to add as much value as you can into the game if you're going to do updates anyway, continue support, and you've got to do it for as cheap as you can. And when I say cheap as you can, I don't mean hiring out slaves or doing it for exposure.
Mm-hmm. Or half-assing it.
Yeah, or half-assing it. I mean, there's ways to design systems that cost very little
Mm-hmm.
and add very much. Like in our last game, the level scaling system. I mean that I think that added a lot of value in stuff in content to our last game. Did you not?
Mm-hmm.
I
And
mean that took like I don't know, probably about a couple hours to program, and it was done. And I think of like 20 minutes of UI stuff.
mm-hmm.
It was really easy, really quick, and it added tons of value to the game.
I'm always curious. I don't know if anyone can answer this, but I would love to know how much work it did, or how much work it took to add in the create a poster mode in XCOM 2 or The Chosen where you can pose your various characters, you have the different filters, you can set a title, things like that.
So I'm not familiar with that system. So basically, you're taking a screenshot, but you're able to pose your characters,
It,
and
it basically allows you to take a snapshot of your characters in that mission and kind of set them up to create your own propaganda poster.
probably not very much.
At least not compared to adding in full on new systems. And a lot of people really love that. And again, it's a really good segue into it when we get to our second topic about giving the player more reason to care about the game. I think that's ultimately what value or adding value to your game does. That if people see that you put in the extra time and work and it's something that they like, they're going to be more willing to support that game in the future. But again,
And
yep,
and as we said in the past, it doesn't. Consumers don't care about how much a thing costs for you
yeah,
to make it,
they care how much
or
it
how
costs
long
to
it takes
buy.
you to make it. It could take you 20 years
Mm-hmm.
and $2 million, or $5 billion in the case of Star Citizen. If the consumers do not like the game, it doesn't matter how long it took you, how much it cost you. If they don't like it, they don't like it.
Yeah, and they're going to never pay for it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it costs consumers don't care if it costs you $1 and 1 minute to make a thing, or 10
Mm-hmm.
hours and or 10 years and $10 million. They don't care. They
Mm-hmm.
some drama YouTubers would, but the and
Mm-hmm.
that's a completely different story. But the actual consumer who's playing your game does not. The consumer,
Mm-hmm.
they care about what it adds to the game, how much value is it that it's adding to the game,
For
and not.
them,
Yeah.
very importantly, because you will have people who, if you release a green hat for your game, they will go crazy for it, and you'll have people just look going like, "Why the hell would I give you any amount of money for this item?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as we've said, I think this goes to another topic we talked about previously, that as you said, the consumer does not, and they will never, I think, fully understand the amount of work that goes into this stuff. They will only see what you put out there, i.e., your trailer art, your store page, and obviously the game itself. As you said, they don't care if this game took 10 years of your life, you took 3 mortgages out on your house, you had to get 2 part-time jobs to finish playing the game. They care about what they see on that store page.
Mm-hmm. And what they experience in game.
Mm-hmm. And like we said, like when you're trying to add value to your game, it is very important to do play testing. And obviously, I think this will be the final point for me. If you're not sure if people want something, ask them. We've seen plenty of developers, especially in independent space, put up polls or just say, "What would you like us to work on next?" Many times you will get that information for free. As we know, every Steam forum game for a single player title, somebody will say, "Just add multiplayer to it." But, and again, just add multiplayer is not the magical cure all as well for this. But you can certainly ask people what they want, what they expect to see. And while you may get a lot of joke answers or things that you can't do, you may get something that is very simple or is a really great idea. And the best point, it's coming from the people who've already played your game. They have an idea of how your game works, and they'll be able to help you more than just getting random advice.
Yeah, and back to what you said about the multiplayer. Oftentimes, adding multiplayer is the exact opposite thing of what you should be doing to add value to your game. Because adding multiplayer is generally a very long, very expensive process,
Oh, yes.
and
And if that
And
screws up, there goes, a whole lot of your budget. And again, very important caveat. When we're talking about adding multiplayer, we're referring to after the game is released and developing a dedicated multiplayer option. This is not the same as during, alpha or early access, coming up with a multiplayer mode while you're designing everything else.
yeah, but if you're running multiplayer,
Mm-hmm.
to a point, you don't want to run single player. You almost want to choose one or the other. I mean, not necessarily. I mean, like it all depends on the game, but
Mm-hmm.
you almost want to choose one or the other, not both.
And it's important to understand this is another topic we talked about earlier. What is going to be the primary mode of your game? If your game is predominantly a single player RPG or FPS, throwing in multiplayer isn't really going to help it. But if your game is, a cooperative based shooter, having a fully unique single player campaign probably is going to help that one as well because more people are going to be interested in the multiplayer. Now,
Hmm.
you can of course have bots like we see in Payday and Left 4 Dead, but that's not the same as creating a 30-hour long fully animated or FMV story driven campaign for your title.
Yeah.
So I think that's all I have to say because I'm saving a lot of it for the personal topic. Anything you want to end this topic on?
Uh, I think that's about it.
All right. And again, like if you guys have any questions while you're watching the live recorded, let us know and we can try and answer them. But again, ultimately, you want to be talking to the people who play your game because they'll be the ones to figure this out better than again just posting randomly on something.
Yeah. Feedback is one of the most important things. And, there's this saying, and I love the saying and hate the saying at the same time of, that ideas are worthless. Execution means everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that holds true in most cases, but it doesn't hold 100% true because feedback, testing, all of that is ideas and everything. That the way that holds true is at the beginning of the project. If somebody says, "Oh, well, I have an idea for a first person shooter, but it takes place in World War III," like, yeah, okay, that's pretty worthless. But like, if you're talking about ideas of, hey, you've got a fully developed game over here, but I think it would be really cool if you added this cool system into it, and it's actually a cool system that would add to the game, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, that people suggest things all the time. A lot of it, 99%, well, probably not 99%, but a high percentage of the time, it's not worth anything. But in the times that it is very valuable. And not only it's just not valuable in the terms of like a monetary value kind of thing. It's valuable in terms of I don't know, getting good feedback kind of thing and
Mm-hmm.
making the game better for both the consumer and the developer kind of thing. It's a double benefit kind of thing for everybody. It's not really something you can really pay somebody for,
Yeah.
but it is something that does have a value. It's just not a monetary value.
Mm-hmm. And I would also add, very importantly, if you're getting feedback from somebody, if they found something that doesn't work in your game or is bad, never ever sell the solution back to the player. Because
Yeah.
we've seen some developers will do that. That they'll save bouncing or important fixes to the DLC, but leave the base game still having those problems. And that is something you never want to do for a game.
Yeah. Like you just don't want to. You don't want to create a problem and then
Mm,
sell back a solution because that's just
yeah,
that's bad business.
yeah. All right. But with that, let's get to our weird game segment, and then the second topic will probably be a little bit on the shorter side because again, it kind of leads or it follows through with this first one. But let's see what oddities are coming out here. Let's see. Hopefully, I got it right on the first try.
You know you cursed us, Josh, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time we say it's a shorter one, it ends up going really long.
Yep. Oh, it was so long since we last did this. Let me get you back here. Oh, let's shrink Shark down. There we go. Okay. So let's see what is coming out in this week. Didn't we look at Stone already?
I have no idea.
I know you forget it all after the streams.
Yeah.
What? Oh, the narrow design of quantum break control. What? Okay. Oh, I don't know what to say about this one.
Looks like a walking simulator.
Hip hop stoner noir, and it's an indie game.
Same genre.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Spider Fear. Morse Code Trainer. Humble Rumble.
And Ryu, to your comment, I would say that ideas are worthless if they would, make the game worse.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is like a very basic ARPG. We're not clicking on this one. The Supper. Short adventure. Huh. So it's a short adventure game. The text art doesn't, or the text or the pixel graphics don't look that bad.
Is that pixel art?
Can't tell. Let's see. Okay, I can't read that title. The inside of a drawer. What? The game has no language except for explanation of key. Okay. You are a black circle. Your goal is reach white circle surrounded in shadow.
They've already broke the language. They have
Mm-hmm.
language all over their page.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hmm.
Trasta. Oh. A game in the genre of survival game. Do not die. Okay.
So it's not. So it's not a survival genre game. It's a game in the genre that is survival games.
Mm-hmm.
Glad we got that clarification there.
Old Tire Balls. Al, what is this? Another Warhammer game? What the heck? Wait, Steel Sky. Why does that developer sound familiar? No, first game.
Shame on you, Ryu, for multitasking.
Hmm.
We need your full, undivided attention right here.
So
Not to mention multitasking is a lie.
so it's a deck building tabletop strategy game. I hate to say it, but that aesthetic does nothing for me. Like, I can't really tell what's going on here.
Yeah. Very dark and dingy.
Like, I'm sure to somebody who plays Warhammer, this all makes sense. But, again, like, it's very hard to make something look compelling, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, let's see. Beats of Fury. Box Kid Adventures. Block Multiplayer. Little Tennis. There's that game we played. Project
Which one?
The Mortal Glory. What the heck? Project Hedra is an ambitious open-world low-poly RPG game inspired by Cube World, Minecraft, and Diablo 2. It aims to be an open-world RPG based around procedurally generated content, allowing for maximum replayability. How many red flags just went off in that reading those two sentences?
Um, was there a game here? I'm only seeing red. I can't even. Is there red flags? Like I can't just see
Red
no
flag the
flagpoles.
game.
I can't even see no flagpoles. I can only just see red on top of red on top of red. Just there's not even any poles.
An indie MMO game. That's a strong sign right there.
Yeah, and in the open world,
With
yeah,
maximum replayability, not just a little bit, but maximum. Exactly, Elgato.
yeah, and it's also random gen, all random gen.
Wait,
No,
it's
nothing.
extreme replayability right there.
Oh, see, now they made a mistake. See, now they've made their fatal mistake. Is they've gone extremely extreme.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to go safely extreme.
Still no mention of the actual gameplay loop. It's procedurally generated, there's classes and crafting, but what are you doing in this world?
Probably nothing but running around
Mm.
uh, environments and killing stuff, and that's
Mm.
probably it. Just grinding for the sake of grind.
Oh, well, you already looked at Void Space last week. The Yellow King. Zapitalism. What? Oh, it's a business strategy game. Wait. Never heard of these places giving you reviews. That's a lot of reviews for it. Okay. There's a
Where's
really
the
good
real?
screenshot right there. This is the kind of screenshot that sells games.
This kind of seems faked. What's the developer publisher?
Lava Mine.
Never heard of them. Is that developer or publisher?
Looks like they're both.
Yeah, that seems questionable at best.
There's Cook Serve Delicious 3. Let's see. Mine Seas. Single player 2D Metroidvania. Let's see. Graphics don't look that bad.
I think it's possible to make a sandbox game if you do it on a low scope. Of course, open world is not low scope.
Hmm. Alright, well, I always like to play a new Metroidvania, so I'll put in a key for that.
Who would have guessed?
Or roguelike.
Yep. Or
Let's see.
platformer.
Paint Composer. Bookbound Brigade. Oh, wait. I think I got a press key for this one. I'll have to double check. Okay. Well, I'm looking for a different story. I don't know how well the gameplay is going to be. Windmill Kings. Terraforming Earth. What the? Wait, what? First game ever to apply procedural generation in platform puzzle level design. Oh, it's
Ooh.
infinitely replayable as well.
Ooh. Did that signal some red flags in your mind?
Mm-hmm.
Randomly generated puzzles?
Oh no.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare with unsolvable puzzles. Where people get soft locked and can't continue on the game.
Oh, and the music's procedurally generated too. That's
Mm,
double procedural generation.
mm.
This looks like.
A train wreck?
A little bit. It looks like they're going for like the Lost Vikings kind of design. Oh no, this guy can't go this way. We need to send Robot B. And then Robot B has to do something to let Robot A pass. But if it's procedural, I bet the puzzles are going to be like very basic elements. Like, oh no, there's a spike pit here, so we can't walk over it. Now we're going to just take the same spike pit, copy paste it over here.
Yeah, either that or they'll put like legitimate puzzles in there, and then they won't be solvable. It'll either be super basic, super boring puzzles, or it'll be legit puzzles that aren't solvable in most cases because of random generation.
And they have a Mario Maker curation system too.
You need to contact some of these developers and tell them to watch our podcast.
What?
Save them lots and lots of money.
What do you think? Should I put in a key and see what we get?
Yeah, we can always watch a train wreck, from a distance.
Or we'll be pleasantly surprised. Or just not so surprised. Let's see.
I think we got more chance of winning the lottery and getting struck by lightning 3 or 4 times in a row.
Oh,
and
here
then winning the lottery again than being surprised on that one.
This seems to be the red flag edition of our thing. This is a hardcore fantasy MMORPG with emphasis on social communities, crafting, party combat, territory capture, and player versus developer content.
Could you scroll up to the top?
You mean that lovely thumbnail or little GIF?
No. At the top where it's showing. No, above that. The very, very top.
Yeah, I can't go any. Yeah.
You see those flags?
Yeah.
They look red to me.
What the hell is that? Oh boy. Developers. You gotta fight the developer. Full crafting. Oh no. And this is from an indie developer.
We need a red flag counter. What are we up to? About 20 now?
Maybe. Let's see. What is this? Oh, goody. Here we go. Astra X is a single-player, turn-based sci-fi 4X strategy game. What? Take charge. Semi-random research grid. I think somebody was telling me about this on one of the forums I visited. Like, they're going for like a Master of Orion kind of feel to it. It's published by Slytherin. They do a lot of the grand strategy, very complicated games.
When you were first saying that, I was like, hold up, that's a red flag. No, wait a minute, it's not. That's all. That's... I was in red flag mode.
Final 76 devs versus player, yeah. Except the devs have all the advantages on that one. Let's see. Labyrinth of the Witch. Simple Dungeon Explorer. Looks like a...
by the way, speaking of Fallout 76 and whatnot, I seen a preview, a trailer the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a trailer for Doom, some kind of Doom game. But in the link down there, you can see the little link in the kind of corner of the trailer, and it said something about Bethesda in the link. How did I don't remember ever Bethesda having anything to do with Doom.
I think they're publishing it now.
That's a red flag for sure.
A bloody red flag.
Yeah, that's a bloody red flag.
Simple, easy to play dungeon exploration RPG is free of difficult game mechanics. Let's see. We'll do 2 more pages, and then we'll get to our final topic.
It's still a bloody red flag,
Mm-hmm.
Oscar.
Emu War. Okay.
Yeah,
Ooh.
so is Fallout 3 and 2 and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's not a red flag at all, El Gordo. They own id Software. You know they own
Suicide.
Fallout 76 too.
Mm-hmm. Suicide Maze Q Puzzle Survival Hardcore Game.
That's a name that just rolls
Mm-hmm.
right off the tongue. It's I think that's an example of safely safe.
Mm-hmm. But it has relaxing mode too. Oh no. Wait, what? All mazes have a hidden. They have a hidden save point. That's great. Mm. Oh, beat all 16 levels and you unlock 2 secret levels. Why does this studio sound familiar too? Nope.
And you don't think that should draw any red flags there, Oscar?
Let's see. Social game, exploration, combat. Can't tell about this one.
So is Fallout 3.
Like, this is kind of like my problem. I can't tell if this is turn-based. Oh, wait, here. It's battle square in real time with tactical pause. I don't know.
Publishers are known for effing up games. They're quite well known for that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they're the ones that effed up Fallout 76. Besides the normal bugs. Maybe they're the ones that pushed for the online.
This one doesn't look too bad. It's another puzzle game, but I don't think it's procedurally generated. It's intricately handcrafted.
And there we go. We have a blue flag, I guess. The first blue flag. I mean, that other game only had red flags. There was no blue flags. Right? That screenshot we looked at, just red flags.
Alright, but I think with that, let's get to our final topic. We'll spend maybe like 15, 20 minutes, but again, who knows when we start getting on this. And that's something about making a game feel personal to the player. And this goes hand in hand with giving it value. My voice is dying. 1 second. But when you're trying to give a game, make it feel personal, I guess where's your mind go, Shark?
I honestly don't know. Like, I know some of the most common ones is character creators, because you get to create the character in the style that you want it to look like. It has no real gameplay, method or anything, but it does help make it feel personal to you. Of course, the funniest thing I've ever seen on games has been this one person who in every game they play with a custom character creator, they set out a goal not to make the coolest character they can make, but between all the features, all the things, try to make it the most derpy looking crazy character they can possibly make it. It's priceless. It's funny as heck.
And I think El Gordo hits it right there. That usually, if you're going to make the game feel personal, there's 2 easy ways, or quote unquote easy ways. You either tell a story that really resonates with somebody. Again, a lot of people fell in love with God of War's story for the arc between Kratos and Arceus? And man, my voice really is dying right now. Or you go something crazy like Death Stranding, as you remember with that commercial and the men were crying tears. about how much they fell in love with that game.
Wasn't that just promotion?
Yeah. Well, somebody was crying, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But even again, like the independent space has really pushed for having these very personal stories. A lot of people resonated with, of course, Gone Home, and dealing with being an LGBTQ person, back in the '90s. What are some other examples? Last of Us. Again, people love the father daughter kind of dynamic for a story, or father son.
Yeah. Another way of personalization is like Disgaea has, to
Mm-hmm.
where you know you can customize every character to an insane degree, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's one thing we really liked in our game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People again like it when they can make something uniquely theirs. Even if they're only using, handmade or handcrafted choices by a developer, they can still assign a way that makes it for them. And
Mhm.
some of the best examples of this would be, Monster Hunter, XCOM, Dark Souls, anything like that where you have a full on character creator or being able to cosmetically personalize your characters.
Yeah, and there's there's systems and stuff that you can also do to create your character, customize it, like like the spear grid in Final Fantasy X. You could you could have you could take let's just say Lulu, the one that starts off as a black mage, and you can just take her right off that path and take her into like a tank path kind of thing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy what you can do with her, and you could do that with any one of them because you can shape the way they all grow, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And customization is kind of like separate, I think, from this topic, but it still is a very big part of it. And I think reuse point is another really good one as well. That you can't really get personal if you're only really controlling one character. Or like, do you think JRPGs, again, not counting the Disgaea side of things, do you think they allow for player personalization? Maybe like again, like the MMO side certainly goes that far.
Yeah, I honestly don't know.
Because we see this a lot more from Western style or CRPG design when you're able to kind of have more of a fine tuning of your character. Again, like to Algoro's point, you can have games where you can control the exact, curvature of your chin bones when you're designing your character.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of those things they just throw in a lot of really bad options, and then there's just one good or maybe two good ones, and then there's just like eight or nine other crappy ones. They're just like, hey, there's a bunch of choices here, but there's only like one or two that are good.
And we can even see this, like, while we've been talking about character creation, there's also games that allow you to personalize things that you use. Whether it's, weapons, ships, your home, anything like that. And all this stuff, again, goes back to adding value to your game. Again, I think, like, as Olgura will definitely demonstrate, there's now the whole ship creation in Warframe. We can talk about, customizing or personalizing your home in Stardew Valley. And games that allow you to, quote unquote, put yourself in the game usually are some of the strongest candidates for personalization.
Ooh, I just found something even bigger than that.
Hmm?
Building games like Minecraft, 7 Days to
Mm-hmm.
Die, any of these voxel based games that have like
Yeah.
blocks where you can really build anything. That is like almost 100% customization. That is
Mm-hmm.
way up there on the percentage customization.
Yeah. And again, being able to as I think Ogoro said right there as well, being able to personalize your game space. Even something. Oh, I think my mic just crapped out there. Test, test. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, wait 1 second. Oh, there we go. Oh, headphone warning on that one. Yeah, maybe I think my headset may be starting to go, but we'll see. We'll have to cross that bridge in a little bit there. But you can see this in something like Factorio, where you can set up everything. Yeah, I know, everything is dropping here. Where you can set up the space exactly how you want things to be. And then we can take things further with, again, like Minecraft survival games, where you can build. Uh-oh. Am I coming in low?
Uh, Maybe a little bit lower.
Uh-oh. Let me double check the voice here really fast. Let's see. Okay. How about now? Uh-oh. Am I any better? Oh, did we lose Shark now?
Kind of.
Oh. Alright, well. Is it back to normal or no? Okay, it's good. Okay, well, we'll go with that. But back to the topic that when you're trying to like create like these kinds of personalized game spaces, you really have to do a lot. It's really again about having a lot of content there to give the player room to breathe in that regard. Like, you can't just, say, we're going to give you full personalization, and then you have two hair cuts with, like, two color options, and that's it.
Or you gotta love it when they give you 5 haircuts, but each one of them are locked to a single color.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And when we talk about personalization, this does get very asset intensive. With, I think, exception to maybe something that goes like the low poly look, or like the very blocky, the Minecraft, Terraria kind of look and feel to it. But like something like Monster Hunter, that had to be ridiculously expensive to create all those various armors and all that kind of stuff in it.
Oh yeah, and the systems that actually allow you to create in everything, that had to be a lot of work too. Not to mention the having that calibrate with the animation system, because like every different height that you can pick essentially has to have a different animation. Now then, there's probably a way that they can make one animation kind of thing and scale it, but that's probably a good bit of programming there to get that to work properly.
Yeah. And to Algora's next point, I think that's another really good one. There are people who will obsessively care about character personalization, and there are those who will not care at all. Again, like for me, I just make sure my guy has brown hair, and that's it. Like I call it a day at that point. And I think for me, I think I care more if I'm building like a team, or like building like my own personalized set of characters in a game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what if when Project Triad comes out and it has a character system, where you create your own character, and there is pretty much every color of hair in there, blue, pink, green, black, white, but there's no brown. What are you going to go with?
I don't know. I'll have to roll dice for that one. Yep, and I think, and speaking of which, I think the other point Elgar made is really good. You want to have a randomize button, because you don't want people to kind of become, decision locked before they even start playing your game. Yeah. And again, we saw that to great effect with Darkest Dungeon, XCOM. Again, any game where you can like lead a group of personalized and customized characters, it does add, I think, to some people. Again, there are people who don't care at all, and then there are people who care very much about it.
Yeah. And you've got me now thinking on the remake. What can we add there? And that's a good question.
Yeah. And again,
But
you have to be really careful with how much you add, because no matter what you do, people will always want more. And
hmm
this is where like workshop or player mods can really help you out a lot in this regard. Whether it was in Team Fortress, Payday, Counter Strike, whatever, being able to basically say, you guys want more content? You go and add it into your game can certainly help. But again, the game has to be set up to accommodate that.
yep.
Every rock should have you should have at least 50 styles of beards for your rocks.
Yeah. And several haircuts.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to personalization like this, it certainly has driven sales. We were talking about this earlier when we were discussing duelists, but microtransactions and cosmetics in games is a very lucrative part of those games because, again, people like to make their own character. They don't want to see, here's my wizard, and here's 700 other wizards with the exact character model, height, color of robe, etc.
Yep. And depending on the game to how much customization you can possibly have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some games will lend itself fully to it, and others will not, depending on the design and everything else. And then you also have all the work behind it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And again, like a extensive character creator system is not easy to do. This is again why many games will just say, do you want to be the blue square or the red square?
Yep.
Of course, Ryu, definitely. And again, we have seen this. Like, look at any AAA game that's been released, and there's probably cosmetic costume options you can add in.
Yeah. AAA tends to go nuts on monetizing that kind of thing.
Yeah. I guess here's a question. I'm going to ask this to you, Shark, and to the audience. Do you think cosmetic or cosmetic skins in single player driven games really matter or a hot sell for people?
For me personally, no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I really don't care. Like, I mean, like, it's like if there's something in there and it really appeals to me and it doesn't cost anything, like I'll swap to it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like, like even games that have like, all these different costumes in there, most of the time, like none of them appeal to me. Like the one of the games I'm playing right now. Let's see here, which one is it? Shining Resonance Refrain. They don't have they have all the cosmetic costume changes. They have like I don't know like 10, 15, 20 per character kind of thing, and they're all free. And like there's only about two or three that I care anything about at all, like anything. And those two or three, like what the one of them is the default.
Yeah.
And two of them are not default, and basically, and you know, I like them, I enjoy them, but I don't think I'd even pay 99 cents for
Yeah,
all of them put together.
yeah, and
But I know like other people, will pay absolutely five
yeah,
dollars, $10 for just a single one. It's like, oh, have you lost your mind? Is
yeah,
what I'm saying.
yeah. And don't forget, of course, about games that feature the quote unquote premium skins. Again, stuff like League of Legends or Path of Exile, where you can spend money for these like crazy cosmetic effects on your characters that have nothing to do with the gameplay itself. My character has a shiny new cape, or my fireball, shoots out rainbows instead of just fire. And there are people who will spend that money in order to stand out. But I want to definitely clarify, or I want to continue to add on what you just said there about like once you found something that you like, you're not really going to change it. And I think that's the same way for a lot of people, or for people who don't care as much about personalization. That once I find the combination that I like, it doesn't matter what else you're going to add. It's not going to change my own personal tastes.
Yeah. I think the only time that cosmetics have really added something to the game for me, like really added something that was worthwhile, was the Soul Calibur 4.
Mm-hmm.
In Soul Calibur 4, the cosmetics in that game added so much to the game. I loved the gameplay already. It was a fighting game that I actually liked,
Mm-hmm.
with controls that actually made sense and everything. Fighting that actually makes sense, one that I could actually play. And then the cosmetics, being able to change and customize all the characters in, they had like tons of different fighting styles. So like you could take that and like I sit there and went in there and I took like some
Mm-hmm.
of my favorite characters in there and made them into my favorite anime characters kind of thing. Like I made like Ichigo from Bleach as a
Mm-hmm.
Mitsuragi or whatever. He
Yeah.
had the black sword and everything. I made sure he had the black sword that looked like Tensei Zangetsu. Gave him the Shihakusho. It looked very much like Ichigo, and I took him. I took Mitsu. I forget his full name. Mitsu something.
Mm-hmm.
I took him and made him into like 5 or 6 different characters, and it legitimately looked like those characters, like maybe even more than the characters that those characters are the games they're actually in, kind of thing. It looked more like them in Soul Calibur than it did in
Mm-hmm.
those games.
Yeah, and
When
I heard so many things about it. What was it, Soul Calibur? What are we up to, 5 or 6 now? Like the latest one having just an all completely crazy in-depth character creator.
Yeah, they had that in 4 too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's probably gotten better, or probably not better, just
More
more.
powerful,
Uh,
I would imagine.
well, I would probably say not more powerful, but more assets, because they're probably using all the old assets plus new ones they've thrown in there, kind of thing.
Yeah. And to Laura's point about like the crazy, kinky, and weird costumes, those have always like been like a very interesting thing for me because like obviously I know why people use the kinky outfits for RE2 remake. I think we can all figure that one out. But like when you have like those very weird outfits, like outside them being gameplay affecting, they just never really like work for me. I guess what about you?
I really don't like the gameplay affecting ones. Those are like a huge turnoff for me. Like I don't really care about the costumes in general, but when they attach stats to them and everything, and it's like, oh, I have to wear this derpy looking costume that I absolutely hate, I'm repulsed by it. And if I want to learn that ability or use that skill or have the stats that I need to make my character work, I have to use that crap.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
One
ooh, that really like that's a big
yeah.
downside for me.
One thing that I really did like about Marvel Spider-Man was that while you had all these crazy costumes that you can put Spider-Man in, they all had powers attached to them. Once you unlock the power, you can put that separate from the costume. You just need to unlock the costume first to get that power.
Yeah, but it makes more sense with Spider-Man because those are not necessarily costumes; those are like just completely different characters, kind of thing. Because Noir Spider-Man didn't really have any spider powers per se. He was mostly just a stealth kind of character. And Spider-Man 2099, he wasn't really a Spider-Man. He was a fan of Spider-Man, basically, that basically kind of went the Batman, Iron Man route and created himself into a sort of Spider-Man kind of in a way and built more powers onto it kind of thing. And then, and then being able to just take those powers and run with it, that's cool. But, those are not really costumes, but really like alternate characters that you can unlock powers from and import it into your others. And that's a completely different story. I like that, but.
Yeah. And again, I think here's one thing that's very important to discuss when we talk about personalization. Actually, two things. One is that if you're going to give the player personalization options, you cannot take that away from them once you give it. As in, if I'm going to build a character, and then let's say I want to change their shirt down the line, you have to give me that option, Dr. Brown. That should be additional DLC right there.
Yeah.
Like, you can't take away personalization after you introduce it. Because then you're really going to piss somebody off there.
Yeah, when you offer, like, you talking about where they offer a free character creator at the beginning, and then and then right after you create your character, you have to go to customizable shop, and you have to pay to get the stuff that was offered to you free before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. And then the other thing that you want to avoid is, we see this in a lot of games that try to go for personalization, but they still use fixed character models for cutscenes. Like, you don't want to do that. Like, if you're going to let me create my own personal character, I expect to see that character in every cutscene, no matter how weird, outlandish, or perfect. There we go. I think that's it.
The issue is when you get into that's costing a lot more money.
Yep. And again,
and a lot more limitation, because then you can't do any actual movies. You can only do cutscenes with the characters themselves, actual character models.
Yeah. And again, and that's one of the big points about this. Like, when we talk about like the very best examples of personalization, we're talking, full on, Soul Calibur-esque character creations. That gets very expensive to do. And I think this is one of those things that you have to either commit fully or just ignore entirely. Because you don't want to just put like a few options and then people are like, well, why can't I make so and so? If you remember, Nintendo got in trouble for this, for not allowing you to have, like, I think it was like a same-sex relationships or different skin color for characters in some of their games. And again, like we said, to some people, that doesn't matter at all, and to others, that's all they're going to care about.
Yeah. And back to what Ryu said is, I hate that too, but it's a lot cheaper to do that.
Of course it is, yep.
A lot cheaper.
And what was the other example I was going to use? Yeah, like something like with XCOM, for instance. Like, one of the reasons that game is so bloated, like, I think it's like a 75 or 85 gigabyte download, is that it has so many assets for character creation. And even with that, people still want more. There are plenty of modders who have added in custom skins, voices, costuming, colors, you name it. I think I have a few of them on my game as well. Because remember, hats are very important to working in XCOM.
Here's a question for you. let's just use the remake of my last game, and we'll say it for the word of the day for Mojo and Board if he's watching.
Mm-hmm.
Chromasia. For the Chromasia remake, if I were to put like customization in there, what do you think would be the minimum kind of customization items that you could put in there and have it work out well?
I would say like super basic, like the simplest
Like
stuff.
I'm thinking like hats,
I was even
monocles,
thinking just like changing
glasses.
like their face, like changing instead of maybe smiling like this, like basically like again I'm doing YouTube reactions right there, but changing like whether their mouth is open, smiling, their eyes, stuff like that.
Hmm.
And then the next that would be like some kind of clothing, or as you said, like a hat. Put like a little pin on them. Something that again will be able to say, okay, this character is different from this character, who's different from this character. Yeah. Wait. Gear that doesn't change appearance. So you're talking about like the ARPG side, where if I grab a broadsword, my character's gonna be walking around swinging a broadsword. If I'm carrying a knife, he's gonna be walking around with a knife, kind of thing.
I never found that to be an issue for me. Like games that had that, like it was like just a little nice touch, but never really cared about it personally,
Mm-hmm.
unless it was like a completely different
Okay.
fighting style.
Oh, I see what Jason's talking about. So games don't that quote unquote give you customization or personalization options, but they don't change the model at all. I think that's always a negative in my book. Like, this is one of the big things that we started to see more with kind of the ARPGs that develop in the mid over the last now I can say over the last 20 years, where it's not just you picking up a sword and your character looks exactly the same. Diablo 2 was a really good example of this. You start with low level armor that it looks very dingy, doesn't look all that impressive. You get your end game ultimate, I forget what the highest rarity is in that game, and that armor's like, we're getting to like Warhammer 40k levels of like fully suited up characters.
Yeah, but I don't think that certain games I could see that being more important for like Diablo and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think like it's important for all the games. Like I didn't think that was important for Chromasia kind of thing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, did you think that was important?
Again, though, you're talking to somebody who doesn't really. Again, I'm one of those people who don't care about personalization options, so I'm
Yeah,
not
me too.
exactly the best judge for it on that front.
Yeah, like because I mean we literally couldn't do it
Mm-hmm.
because I mean that would be color changes to the characters, and the color is part of the story, and that
Yeah,
just
yeah, like that. Unless you're like talking about, some games have like the post game, we don't care anymore about the story. You want the bad guy to team with the good guy to team up with their sworn enemy? Do it. We don't care anymore. The story is done, kind of thing. What
yeah.
was I going to say? Personalization. I forgot. I forgot what I was going to bring up as the next example. Hmm. What was it? Monster Hunter.
Unless I think they might care about customization if it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if they can throw a top hat and a monocle on somebody, I think that would be pretty entertaining, and people might be like, "Yeah, I got to go with the top hat and monocle."
Yeah. Oh, we've done that a few times. I think when I made the Monster Hunter character, we went with a pompadour just to make it like JoJo Bizarre's adventure related there.
Yeah,
And like we said, like for some people, like there are plenty of reasons that people will personalize characters. It could be as simple as we just said, making a character look as weird as possible. It could be making themselves in a game, making friends and family. And we've seen, I know there's been studies in the MMOs about people making characters that kind of personify who they really want to be. Yep, I remember that one too. I remember reading that as a cheat in, I think it was the Dreamcast magazine.
That was a cheat code?
Quote unquote there.
Huh.
But yeah, people, like, again, if people can, attach any part of their personality or what they like to your game, it's going to make them care more about this. And this could easily segue into a discussion about fan art and fandom, but that's way too big for right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I remember there's one big warning I wanted to say. I already talked about relationships and stuff like that. Did Rust have that as well too?
I don't think it was just bulge. I think it was more than bulge, because didn't they fully render those out?
Oh boy, I can sense that the monetization's coming right now. But oh yeah, that's another really important one. If you're going to do character creation, you should be very mindful about letting the player, how far do you want the player to go with it? And this is very important if you're going to make multiplayer based games. Because like Rust, it was either Rust or Ark got into some trouble there by not allowing you to choose what your character was going to be. They want to make it be like, you're born, you can't decide, how you're born, so why should you be able to decide in this game? And you have to be really careful about this. Because like we said, there are people who saw that and were like, who really cares? Does it have people, riding in the streets about that?
Yeah. That's questionable behavior.
Yeah. And we could, I almost forgot, we could also talk about games that try to go for historical action. And that, I just remember the example that came to my mind. When you have, like, going back to that example, if you don't go far enough, people will have problems with your game. Battle Brothers got into trouble with this. That they have the characters, they have a huge variety of male character models, but they got into trouble with people who want to have female or battle sisters in their games. And they came out with saying, of course, what you don't want to say, that would be too much work to put into the game, because people really love that one when you say that. And it did cause a little bit of a controversy for that game.
Yeah, I don't think they said it would be too much work. I think they said something else.
Well, I spoke to the developer about this, and he said it had to do a lot with the procedural text for their story generation.
Mm.
And I think going back, and we'll begin to wrap things up in the next few minutes, but going back to our first part, talking about multiplayer, personalization is something that you want to try and figure into your game as early as possible. Because, again, these are elements that, in the best games, are going to be felt throughout the process.
As for the last developer example, like I think what they should have done is said something along the lines of, we would like to put females in there, but if the demand for the game and the demand, if we don't make enough money, we can't afford to put it in there. So if we can sell enough copies, if you guys buy enough copies, we can put it in there. But if you don't, then we can't.
Yep. And that was another point that Jason brought up, that he said that as well. Like, they try to itemize things down as best as they could about what they could do, what they can't do, what they could do, they have enough money. And again, like, this is the ultimate, this again gets back to our main point about personalization, that you have to be really careful with it. Because if you only have a few options, you're going to piss off the people who want something that they can't do. If you have too many options, it can easily balloon your budget. So you really do have to set things very early as to how far can I reasonably go with this character creation?
Well, the thing is Oscar, is that would not be like the exact words I would use. There would be, many, long period of time analyzing it, going over it, with the marketing team basically, and figuring out a way to frame that properly.
Yeah, you don't
And
want to say, buy 200 copies of my games and I'll give you a new hat.
yeah,
Although, if you want to get in trouble on YouTube, you can do that route. If you want to get it internet famous.
hmm and they got it pretty internet famous over that.
Oh, yes. And it is tough to know how far you want to go with it because, again, it adds to some people. This adds a tremendous amount of value to their game, but also to some people, they don't care, and it's perfectly fair. I think either way to go. Like, I guess that's the weird thing about me. Like, if I play a single player game where I'm just creating one character, I couldn't care less about how that character looks. If I'm playing a game like XCOM or a strategy game where I'm be able to personalize every unit I have on the field, then I'm going to spend some time making them all look different and weird and unique like that.
Here's a question: what if in XCOM you had like certain characters you couldn't customize, like say they had like some story characters, and how would you feel if they had like X amount of story characters, pick random number,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had your other characters? How would you feel if you couldn't customize 3 story characters, but you could customize all of the others?
Well, again, to me, I'm fine with that. But again, it's important. Again, the caveat here is that you're talking to somebody who most of the time doesn't care about personalization. Yeah. And I think El Gordo's point is also really good as well with that. That when you're losing characters like that, you can very much get into that routine of, once that character is dead, I make a new one. For some games, that character that you make is going to be with you for 80, 100, 200 plus hours. Oh yeah, there are people who, they lose their favorite character in XCOM or Darkest Dungeon, I'm pretty sure they throw something out the window.
Mm.
We've seen people get a little upset dying in XCOM and Darkest Dungeon. And yet, it's very... Like, Darkest Dungeon, again, is another really interesting example, because people wanted more character skins for that game, and more color options, and they just felt like it was just going to be too much work. Or too much work, and too much, not on the budget, to make multiple character skins for, every class in it.
For you, is that the 300 hours before the 300, before it gets to negative 300 hours? Is that taken from negative 600 hours?
And I guess this will be my final question, and then I'll toss over to you. What do you think about games that have set characters and then lets you customize or personalize the things on them? So Team Fortress being a primary example. You can create a custom looking heavy, but you can, put sunglasses on, you can give them a weird hat, you can, give them a medal. Does that matter to you when it's I guess it's full personalization on a locked character?
Well, it would depend on if I like the character, how much I care for the character, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Team Fortress kind of thing, I didn't, like the characters at all, so that wouldn't matter for me. But another game that did that, Tales of Berseria.
Mm-hmm.
It was, the characters were locked in. They did have 2 or 3 outfits, kind of thing, but I don't think they were changeable necessarily. I think they might have had one that you could change, or no, I think they unlocked as you unlocked them through the story, kind of thing. but like there was nothing, really very much customizable there. But the part that wasn't really customizable was, you could equip things like angel wings, a halo, mustache, top hat, all these, a pin, that had a heart on it or a rose on it, all these different things. And, I already really liked their characters kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I did enjoy that. It was not like a major feature or anything to me. I think they did have some minor stats to it, to where they were,
Mm-hmm.
not, they did affect gameplay, but they were like so minor it didn't really matter, kind of thing. So you could just run the cosmetics you wanted, or just, or just run the stats you wanted, kind of thing. It really didn't matter either way,
Mm-hmm.
because the stats were not giving you much of anything anyway. But I felt that was a nice touch, kind of thing.
Okay.
I would have preferred more, you know, more actual costumes, kind of thing. But scoping everything, I can understand why they didn't.
Yeah.
I know. I'm pretty sure they did some DLC for costumes, after that, and they went. I think they went down that bad route of like $5-10 for a costume, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't buy a single dang one of them. But there are people who have been working on worked on mod sport, made their own costumes that you would mod in.
Yeah.
But they didn't make the game mod friendly, so you would have to go through pretty excruciating pain to get the mods in there, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't care enough to even bother with it.
All right. So I think that's all I have to say for now. So do you have anything you want to add to wrap up on the topic?
Well, we had several different ways that we were customizing. We customized by visual customization of your character.
Mm-hmm.
We customized by stats of your character. We customized by story of your character. We customized by the choices that you make in the
Mm-hmm.
story. We didn't talk much about that one, though. We talked about the building, the customized building of what you can, like your house or whatever that you
Mm-hmm.
live in. I think we kind of need to hit more on the choices, kind of thing, like story choices, and where that kind of
I think the
comes
story
in.
is going to be too big because there's a lot to unpack with story choices, and especially what it can do to impact the game down the line. Because then we're getting into like telltale territory.
I don't know. Telltale, besides like the first one or two, didn't have any story customization. It was just,
They will remember
they'll
it.
remember that.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we can talk about story. Maybe we can add that to the list for our the never-ending topics list.
Well, the never-ending topic clips seem to be ending at this point, so it would be good to get
Mm-hmm.
another entry on there.
And as always, if you guys have suggestions for topics, let us know. And we still need a catchy name for these casts as well.
Although we think we might have one already.
Yeah, we'll see. But I think that's going to do it then. So, as always, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next Sunday, probably around 3:34 p.m. EST. To find me all around, obviously here on Game Wisdom, GameWisdom.com, and I'm on Twitter at GWBicer. And for you, Shark, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Nexus Games INC1, which we do now have a background. So
Did you
Twitter will
announce
be
it with a YouTube video?
not yet, not
Okay.
yet. That's coming. That's coming. But we do finally have a background. I would like to get one more iteration in it before we actually start putting it out there, and got a little bit more other work I got to do with implementing that background into other things.
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see any reason why, besides just this forever going on forever. The first Twitter post being this week. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't. So look forward to it. It should be, save for any stupid things that happen, which is probably going to happen now that I've said it. But it should be this week, first post on the Twitter account.
Okay.
And should be followed by many, many others. There's many. Once the first one gets up, there ought to be, tons more following it because. But we have, so that's one way. Another way would be Discord. Discord would be the best way to get a hold of me. I talk to other developers. I mentor as many developers as I can, and shoot me a private message if you're on the Game Wisdom Discord, or if you're not on the Game Wisdom Discord. By the way, Sharky, in case you didn't know, and and I should be up at the towards the top in the Game Wisdom Discord under Roundtable Guest. And the other, or join my Discord server, and there should be a link to that in the recorded version of this podcast.
All right. So with that said, I will be back later tonight for our regular game streaming, and as we already talked about, we'll be back next Sunday for our next live show. So thank everybody for tuning in. Have a great rest of your night, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where some of the art and science of games. Until next time, take care.